Welcome back to Connection Point Studies. Hey, last week you had a big party, I'm sure. We did listen to the music, and this is a time when you always will take time to get together and do a social. Maybe you have some new people in your group.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you do, but hopefully you're having a good time. This series of studies are going to take us right up to Easter. So let's dig in. Let's get after it, Ron. Let's give them a warm-up. Hold it. Before we do that, what's a warm-up question for? Maybe there's some new groups starting right now. Why do we do warm-up questions?
Well, the idea of a warm-up question is you want to learn about the people in your group. Kind of, it's like tell your story.
Right. So when we ask you these questions, everyone in the group answers, and you need to reveal a little bit about yourself. So we've got a good warm-up question to start right here, so let's get started.
Yeah, so the first question is, have you ever been sent on a mission? Now, I'm not talking necessarily about a mission trip for church or something like that, but just some kind of mission. Like maybe you were in the military, you got sent on a mission, or your boss sent you to the store for coffee or whatever. What was your mission?
What was your mission? I think you need to share the best mission you've ever been on, don't you
Okay,
think?
yeah, the best one.
I think the best one you've ever been on, because there's some, or the worst one, either one will work. And before you come back, read Matthew chapter 9, verse 35 through 10:42. And be ready to answer this question. Put yourself in their scene and then kind of think about what it felt like to be there, and we'll talk about it. Okay, Ron, we're studying now in Matthew, and we're going to be covering Matthew all the way up to the last week of Christ's life. And so tell a little bit, let's talk about the writer, Matthew.
Sure.
Tax collector, right?
Yeah, not only a tax collector, but the chief tax collector, which means he was really bad.
and he knew how to write.
Yeah.
He had to keep the tax collections record, and they were not known for their they were not known for their honesty.
Yeah.
And Jesus selected him out of this group and said, "Come follow me," which was amazing that he did this, and he followed him.
And he had a big party for all of his tax collector friends, and they all got together.
And when he came, he brought his pen and his pad, which I think is pretty fascinating because we get more of Jesus's sayings than any of the other books, because I think he was writing down, as he would listen, he would write down the sayings and write down the instructions and such. So
yeah, the other thing is that Matthew wrote to Jewish people primarily, and his mission was to describe Jesus as the Messiah.
okay, so we ask people to put themselves in the scene, and feel what it felt like. So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's describe the scene a little bit.
Yeah, so you get at the end of chapter 9, they're going through the region, all these towns and villages. You kind of picture, here comes Jesus and his disciple group marching into town. All the kids are coming out, the people, everybody wants to hear. There's a lot of excitement. And it says they were healing every disease and sickness. Right. He was very popular at this time. So it was probably a really exciting moment to be around.
I can't imagine. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So when he selects the 12, I just can't even imagine what it was like to be one of those 12. It must have been amazing. And we're going to be putting ourselves in their shoes a little bit here. So we have a question that we want them to focus on a little bit more.
Yeah, so what we want to begin with is thinking about what set up this moment. So in chapter 10, Jesus is going to send out the disciples. And really what we want to know is what led up to this. So as we think about it, what was the thing that set that whole deal up?
You may want to focus in chapter 9, 35 through 10:4 to find that answer. All right, Ron, so what do you think led up to this? I love that passage that you selected here.
Well, there was all this excitement, and but then at the same time, it says that Jesus saw these people who, he says they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. And the Bible says that Jesus had compassion on them. The Greek word means he literally felt it in his gut. And he turns to his disciples and he says, "Ask the Lord of the harvest to send out workers."
Wow.
And then the next thing he does is send out workers.
Yeah. In fact, I love the picture. He says, "Look at the harvest field," which I kind of think they were probably harvesting right then at that moment.
Yeah.
And he said, "Look at that harvest. It's all ready. We just got to send workers out." And then he sends them out.
Yeah.
So that's the scene, that's the picture. Hopefully they picked up on there. So now the next question we want you to think about is, what instructions does he give? And you can kind of look at verses 5 through 15 to kind of get some of the answer to that. So take a minute, look at those verses, answer that question. All right, Ron. So this is I love these instructions, and it's kind of lengthy, really.
Right.
The honest part is the bulk of the rest of the passage is the instructions, right?
Yeah.
But what's notable out of those instructions? What do you think they picked out of those instructions?
Well, the thing that I found interesting was when I read this in the Message paraphrase, like we did in the Buried Life, the Message, and he put it this way. He said, don't go do a big fundraiser, raise a bunch of money. Don't plan on traveling to the ends of the earth. It was like, don't make this a big deal. Go to your neighbors, go to the people close to you. Don't make a big deal out of this, and don't force it. Just go and do what's easy.
And I kind of like his idea. When you get rejected, just shake the dust off your feet. But he didn't give them any money. He didn't give them a lot of things, but what he did is he gave them authority. I love that. He gave them his authority, so they were taking his name and doing it in his name, which was pretty powerful.
Yeah.
But, I mean, pretty specific instructions here, right?
Oh, yeah.
Really fun. Well, hopefully they had a chance to kind of notice some things out of there that were very interesting to them. Mm-hmm. But let's ask the next question here.
Yeah, so the next question is, now that they're going, Jesus tells them there's some response that you should expect, and he gives them some pretty good idea of what they're going to run into, and it's found in verse 16 through 23. So look at that.
Okay, Ron, so it's obvious. He's warning them it's not going to be easy, right?
Yeah, and in fact, they probably thought, hey, what are you talking about? We've been going to these villages, healing people, everybody's happy, it's no problem. And he's saying, no, you're arrested, you're going to go.
He says, when you're arrested.
It's like,
did I sign up to be arrested?
Yeah, that wasn't what we've been experiencing so far, yeah.
In this series, we didn't talk a lot about this, but the disciples had to make a choice as to whether or not they're going to follow and do what Jesus said, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of a scary deal, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think Jesus, in fact, I think that he's actually talking also a lot about what's going to happen to them in the future and not necessarily this particular journey.
So as we look at this and we look at their choices, it kind of tells us a little bit ourselves, right? We shouldn't worry about what we're going to say when we get in a tough spot because we're a Christian. It's just the reality. So our next question that we wanted to focus on.
Yeah, so this question is really, in this series, is pro-choice. It's all about the choice that you have to make. And Jesus tells them about this choice, the impact of making this choice. And it's in verse 24 through 33. So what does he tell them about this choice?
You look at that and we'll come back and talk about it. So what's he tell them? He says, don't give in to your fears, right?
Right. And in fact, I think he's also trying to prepare them that because things are going to be tough, you might be tempted to think, oh, things are tough, then maybe we're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, that's exactly the plan. This is going to get tough.
Is that, I was thinking about that in the application in my life. I think, okay, when you have a tough kid, when you have a tough marriage, when you have it tough in your business, when you have it tough, it's the same kind of principle here, isn't it? It's not always a sign that that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you need to stick with it, I think.
Yeah, and also the fact that things are good right now could be a bad sign.
Oh, no, we're not worried about that. Well, so you don't give in to your fears.
Yeah.
And that's really the critical thing. So one last thing that we want them to do is take a little bit of time, and we want you just simply to pray around your group and think about the choices you have to make. When God called you into following him, What are your choices? And then take a little bit of time and share together, and we'll come back next week at Connection Point Studies.